He lacked experience in this and required assistance. Authentic tales of forbidden love. Raising Tanner on my own wasn't part of my vision, yet life has a way of veering off course. His father, Derek, was 2 decades my senior, a man entrenched in his habits, anchored in customs that seemed more like shackles than support. When Tanner came into the world, I realized I would need to embrace both roles of nurturing and guidance for him. Indeed, that was the case. From the moment he could walk, I brought him along to every event, hockey games, baseball games, amusement parks. Whenever I ventured out, he was always there beside me. I wished for him to perceive the world with a clarity unclouded by antiquated notions. Derek held strong views on the upbringing of a boy, yet I was uninterested in shaping Tanner to mirror his father. I hoped for him to embody goodness, kindness, and strength in meaningful ways. I believe I achieved my goal. Tanner blossomed into a young man with a heart that overflowed beyond the confines of his chest. Constantly watching over others, consistently ensuring my well-being. Perhaps it was due to the fact that it had been just the two of us for such an extended period, yet we grasped each other's thoughts without the necessity for numerous words. At 18, he stood taller than me by a full head, possessing Derek's sharp jawline yet inheriting my soft, warm eyes that were always observing. "Are you ready, Mom?" Tanner shouted from the hallway. Already clad in his Bruins hoodie, prepared for the game. "Just give me 5 minutes. I'll call back while I slip on my jacket." The game of hockey had always been our passion. A cherished tradition we never overlooked. He smiled when I finally appeared, shaking his head. "It certainly took you a while." "Patience is a virtue," I joked, giving him a playful nudge as we stepped outside. In the arena, we found ourselves moving to the familiar cadence we had always known. Exulting, vociferating at poor decisions. Enjoying a shared basket of fries. As the game progressed, I realized I was watching him more than the ice itself. When did he come of age? The child who once pulled at my hand, pleading for ice cream, had transformed into a man, his elbows resting on his knees, eyes focused intently on the game, the flickering lights creating shadows that danced across his face. "You okay?" he asked, catching me staring. Grinned. "Indeed, just reflecting." He refrained from pressing. He never did. Yet, as the night deepened and we cruised home amidst the soft murmur of the car, he began to speak. "I realize I don't express it often, but thank you." "For what purpose?" "For all things." His voice had taken on a gentler quality, almost tinged with uncertainty. "For your constant presence. For always ensuring I felt complete." My throat constricted. "You were never lacking anything, Tanner." He nodded, his grip on the wheel tightening slightly. "I understand." In that instant, a realization washed over me. Perhaps I had been too occupied attempting to ensure Tanner enjoyed a fulfilling life that I had neglected to create for my own. Tanner guided the car into the driveway, the gentle hum of the engine diminishing as he shifted into park. Neither of us made a move immediately. The stillness in the car, the unspoken connection we shared, seemed too significant to simply overlook. "I mean it, Mom," he said, turning toward me, his expression unguarded, sincere. "I can't imagine what my life would be like without you." A lump formed in my throat, yet I remained resolute in my silence. "Allow it to settle." I leaned over the center console, and wrapped my arms around him in a warm embrace. Initially, it was merely a hug, indistinguishable from countless others. Cozy, inviting, a haven of solace. But then, a change occurred. Perhaps it was the way Tanner lingered just a moment longer than expected, or the rhythm of my heartbeat. All at once it seemed overwhelming. His arms enveloped me with strength, firm and unwavering, and for a fleeting instant, I lost track of our surroundings. I drew back initially, clearing my throat. "Let's get inside," I said. The atmosphere surrounding us crackled with an unexpressed tension. Later that afternoon, Tanner rapped on my bedroom door. "Hey, are you occupied?" I glanced away from my laptop. "Not quite." "What's going on?" He paused in the doorway. Hands tucked into the pockets of his hoodie, a rare look of uncertainty crossed his face. "I require your guidance on a matter." That was fresh. Tanner had always embraced his independence, solving problems through his own resourcefulness. He entered and settled on the edge of my bed, letting out a breath before he began to speak. "There's a girl from college. We've been having many conversations, and I believe it's time for me to ask her out." Something within me tightened at those words, yet I chose to dismiss it. "That's wonderful, darling," I remarked, maintaining a cheerful tone. "How is she?" "She is pleasant. Humorous. Extremely intelligent." He massaged the nape of his neck. I am unsure of how to proceed. I really hope I don't seem awkward, you know. I aim to leave a positive impact." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief at a subject I could genuinely contribute to. "First and foremost, simply be yourself. Young women value sincerity." "Yeah, but what should I even discuss?" He let out a deep groan, collapsing onto his back. "I have this sense that I'll just be sitting there, looking foolish." I chuckled. "That's why you maintain the momentum of the dialogue. Inquire about her interests, what brings her joy, and what she enjoys doing. Focus closely. Get in touch. And above all, take a moment to unwind." Tanner turned his head toward me, his expression shifting into a thoughtful gaze. "What if we engage in some practice? Rehearsal?" "Indeed." He propped himself up once more. "Like a make-believe date. You can take on the part of the girl, and I'll do my best to be myself." The request took me by surprise, yet it was innocuous enough. Merely another instance of my assistance, as I had consistently done before. "Let's make sure we do it properly." That evening, we ventured out. Tanner was determined to approach everything as if it were a genuine date. Holding doors open. Pulling out my chair at the restaurant, even insisting on paying the bill despite my protests. Initially, it seemed absurd, engaging in make-believe, yet before long, I discovered a genuine enjoyment in it. We shared laughter effortlessly, falling into the familiar cadence that had always defined us, yet with an undercurrent of something distinct. A fresh wave of energy, a sense of playfulness that brought an unexpected thrill. At one moment, Tanner leaned forward on his elbows, his gaze fixed intently on mine. "This is actually quite enjoyable." "It is," I confessed, swirling my wine glass. "You're quite skilled at this," he remarked. "It hardly feels like practice at all." The way he gazed at me in that moment. It felt distinct. Kind purpose. My stomach fluttered with anticipation. I chose to overlook it. When we finally arrived home, an unspoken change had settled between us once more. "This helped," Tanner said as he closed the car door. "I feel a greater sense of confidence now." Grinned. "I'm pleased." He paused for a moment, then unexpectedly wrapped his arms around me in another embrace. And just as it had the night before, an unspoken tension hung in the air between us. Something that neither of us could articulate, yet both of us could sense. It was unthinkable. Yet, it was genuine. I never intended for it to escalate to this point. Initially, I convinced myself it was insignificant. Merely a gentle tug. A playful illusion crafted from the comfort of familiarity, and the soothing embrace of camaraderie. Yet, there was nothing simple in the way Tanner regarded me. Nothing innocent in the way my heart raced when he drew near. The night he revealed it all, I sensed the earth tremble beneath me. The revelation that there was no college girl. That he had fabricated her existence to draw nearer to me, ought to have incited my anger. Instead, I had sensed something far more perilous. Respite. For I had always been aware. Beneath the surface, I noticed how his gaze lingered a moment too long, especially when he believed I was oblivious to it all. The way his voice softened when he uttered my name. I had experienced it as well. I ought to have turned it off right away. I ought to have conveyed to him that whatever emotions he was experiencing were merely a fleeting mistake. A transient infatuation, something he would eventually outgrow. However, the issue was that I was unable to deceive him. This is not the focus. I had been struggling with it as well. Thus, when he requested that I join him beyond the city's limits, hidden from curious gazes, I complied. Our initial encounter was marked by minimal conversation. The cool autumn breeze enveloped us as we strolled down a slender dirt path, the sky transitioning from a rich blue to a soft violet. Tanner held his hands in his pockets, his shoulders taut. His mouth formed a narrow line. I maintained a cautious distance, fearing that even the slightest touch of his arm against mine would break the fragile control I still possessed. It was only when we reached the crest of the hill, standing in the stillness of the waning day, that he finally spoke. "You don't have to feel guilty," he said, his voice gravelly. I exhaled softly. My eyes locked on the distant horizon. I murmured. I ought to feel remorseful. However, I do not. I sensed him move next to me, pivoting to meet my gaze. The intensity of his gaze was overwhelming, yet I found myself rooted in place, unable to escape. "You think I don't know how impossible this is," he murmured. I struggled against it, Lily. I truly did. However, I am unable to. His words reverberated within me. I shut my eyes, taking a deep breath as I sought to find my balance. This was perilous, audacious. And yet, standing here with him, enveloped in the stillness, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, it felt more genuine than anything had in a long time. "You don't have to say anything," Tanner continued. His voice is now more gentle. "I want you to understand that it's genuine. It's here to stay." I released a slow breath, feeling a tightness in my chest. This wasn't merely an infatuation, a transient attraction destined to extinguish itself. It was an undercurrent. A force that had been gathering strength long before either of us dared to confront it. And I didn't want it to disappear. For weeks, we continued to gather in this manner. Whispered strolls along concealed paths, cherished instances that seemed to transcend the boundaries of time. At times, our conversations drifted into the realm of silence. There were moments when our silence conveyed everything we needed to express. Each step I took alongside him seemed to pull at the fabric of my resolve, blurring the lines between what was right and the undeniable truth I could no longer ignore. One evening, as the sky blazed with hues of red and gold, Tanner came to an abrupt halt. I looked at him, bewildered. His gaze held mine with a fervor that left me momentarily breathless. "I can no longer pretend that I don't desire to reach out to you." My heart pounded fiercely within my chest. "Tanner." "I won't," he interrupted, shaking his head. "Only if you request it." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. The atmosphere surrounding us was dense, pulsating with an electric and perilous energy. He stood in anticipation. Anticipating my decision. That was the most difficult aspect, as I truly desired for him to. "I regret allowing him to kiss me." That was the thought that lingered in my mind during the stillness, when the world fell silent and there was nothing to mask the relentless beating of my own heart. Yet, I would recall the sensation it evoked. The way his lips met mine with an assurance that ignited a blaze within me, and I realized there was no turning back from this moment. It began with a simple idea. A gentle caress as he tucked a loose strand behind my ear. The way his fingers lingered for a moment too long against my skin. And then, one evening, as the sky deepened into darkness, and we found ourselves alone in the stillness of the woods, he finally bridged the distance that lay between us. His lips felt invitingly warm. His hands were steady as they cradled my face, as if he had been waiting for this moment for far too long. Perhaps he had. Perhaps we each did. I ought to have stepped back. Instead, I dissolved into him. The moment lingered intentional, as if neither of us wished to shatter the enchantment that enveloped us. His hands glided down to my waist, drawing me nearer. And I surrendered to the moment. My body responded before my mind could catch up, my fingers clutching the front of his jacket, grounding myself to him. As we finally separated, our breaths intertwined in the crisp night air. Our foreheads touched gently. His hand continued to keep me close. Tanner whispered an apology, yet his tone betrayed any semblance of remorse. I swallowed hard, my hand still clenched in his jacket. No, you are not. His lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. No, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. I am not. I released a trembling breath, taking a step back to avoid doing something impulsive, something even more impulsive than what had already transpired. My heart raced, my mind grappling to keep pace with what we had just experienced. Tanner observed me intently, as though he feared I might retract everything, as if it were all just a figment of imagination. However, I was unable to accomplish that. I had no desire to. From that moment forward, everything transformed. The stolen walks stretched into eternity, the touches grew ever more intimate. He would create reasons to let his fingers graze against mine, to linger just a bit too near. And I allowed him to, because that was my desire. There was an undeniable thrill in the way he made me feel, as if I were emerging from a long slumber, like I had been navigating my existence in a haze, and could finally see the world in sharp focus. One evening, as we perched on the hood of his car, gazing up at the stars, Tanner turned to me. His expression was a mystery. This is more than just a game for me, he expressed. His voice was soft yet resolute. I locked eyes with him, feeling a tightness in my chest. I understand. He breathed out gently, his fingers gliding in delicate circles on my knee. I refused to conceal it. My stomach churned. Tanner, we have no other option. His jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration crossing his features. But why is that the case? This situation is far from ordinary. My voice barely rose above a whisper, yet the burden of the words felt overwhelming. Because if individuals discover it, I don't care what people think. He interrupted, sighing as he looked away. You might think that now, but my feelings for you have been growing for months, Lily. His voice was gritty, brimming with an essence that stirred my breath. You believe I haven't considered the implications of this, the potential price it may carry. I swallowed hard, my hands twisting nervously in my lap. I have no regrets, he whispered, taking my hand gently. Not a single moment of it. His fingers intertwined with mine, warm and steady, exuding an undeniable sense of certainty. Perhaps that was the most terrifying aspect of everything. Since I felt no regret about it as well. I reassured myself that this wouldn't endure. It was merely a transient instance. Something that emerged from the mystery, the excitement of hidden moments. Yet with each touch, each kiss, I realized I was deceiving myself. Tanner devoured me. We began gathering at my apartment. A space that had previously seemed vacant, merely echoing the faint recollections of my parents. Now it felt transformed. Now it carried his scent. The cologne hung in the air. The subtle aroma of his jacket resting on the back of my couch. It transformed into a realm uniquely our own, distinct from all that surrounded it. In this place, silence reigned. Devoid of whispered exchanges or anxious looks cast behind us. Only Tanner and I entwined in a perilous, exquisite chaos. Initially, we attempted to act as if it were insignificant, making jokes, teasing, and maintaining a light atmosphere. He would pursue me around the kitchen, attempting to steal a kiss while I evaded him with laughter. I would perch on the windowsill, gazing at the city lights as he lingered behind me, his arms encircling my waist. His lips grazed the nape of my neck. It had a whimsical quality. It was perilous. It encompassed all that there was. Tanner remained silent when it came to discussing what lay ahead. I believe he was aware it was unwise to inquire. For him, this sufficed. Simply existing in my presence, cherishing these moments. Even if they were never guaranteed outside the confines of my apartment. Yet, I found myself questioning how much longer I could maintain the facade. One evening, as we rested next to each other, with his arm resting casually over my waist, I turned to face him. His gaze was already fixed on me. Obscure and indecipherable. What occurs when this is no longer sufficient? I spoke softly. His fingers glided over my skin, creating languid patterns. Is it insufficient for you at this moment? I paused. That wasn't my intention, and he was aware of it. Yet, Tanner possessed a knack for sidestepping the issues he preferred not to confront. I let out a soft sigh, resting my forehead gently against his chest. This can't go on indefinitely. He tensed just a bit. Yet, his voice remained unwavering as he spoke. Why not? I drew back, gazing at him. One day, you'll desire something greater. You'll desire a genuine connection. A person you can invite for a meal. A person with whom you can be completely open. His jaw tightened. Do you really believe that matters to me? Tanner. Nob sat up, running a hand through his hair. You keep expressing this as if it's just a passing phase. As if it's merely something that's destined to fizzle out. However, it is not. Not suitable for my taste. I gulped, feeling a constriction in my chest. I cherish you, Lily. His voice was hoarse, his eyes filled with desperation. And I don't mind if we have to keep it under wraps. I remain unfazed by the world's lack of understanding. You're everything I desire. His words pierced my heart, leaving a small crack in its facade. Because I wished to trust him. I wished to believe that love by itself could keep everything intact. Yet, affection failed to transform the world. Affection did not eliminate the repercussions. I extended my hand, gripping it firmly. I whispered, I love you too. Indeed, it was the truth. Yet, affection alone couldn't always suffice. And one day, he would come to realize that as well.